Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I was lucky enough to chat with actor Adam Faison. He's been on your screen in projects ranging from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to Grace and Frankie. But starting January 16th, you can see him play Alex on the Freeform series Everything is Gonna Be Okay. We talk about his audition for the show, his love of poetry, how learning sign language helped form a deeper bond for him, and more. It's a great interview, and I hope you enjoy.
Hey, Les. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking time today. I really appreciate it.
Heck yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be chatting with you.
So, I I've seen the commercial for Everything's Gonna Be Okay, and was just talking with someone yesterday about how on projects sometimes it can be really hard in a pitch room to get across tone, and I cannot imagine when the folks were pitching that show trying to explain that well, it's got this and it's got that, but no, it's funnier than it sounds. I promise that,
Yeah,
because I could see
yeah,
where it could go really wrong, and so I was excited to get
yeah.
to talk to you about the audition for this process, or for this project, and what you thought when you read the character of Alex. I know maybe it's not as secretive as
Yeah.
going on board, Agents of Shield or something where they can just be super weird. But but
Yeah, good
what
research.
what did you what did you think when you first read the part of Alex, or what was the audition process like?
Yeah. So okay. So I had actually been familiar with Please Like Me because my friend Michael introduced me to it, and I think at that point I'd already seen the first season on Hulu, and then so I guess tonally I kind of had an idea of what it was going to be. I know he's a lot more sort of like a subdued sort of comedy, and it toes this line between sort of like awkward and like sad and like action, like simultaneously hilarious. So I had kind of an idea going into it what I was like, okay, Josh Thomas. I was like, at first I had to look up to make sure it was the same Please Like Me Josh Thomas. And then and then I got the breakdown said a flamboyant looks like a sexy weasel is what it said verbatim. Um, and, I was like, I don't quite know what to make of that. And so I just kind of came in and I kind of played it a little bit like I was like sexy weasel. I was like, what does that say to me? I was so small, but packed such a punch. I thought those were such powerful words. And I was like, okay, so Weasel's kind of like, he's a little slippery. He's kind of like smooth, and maybe he's like a little, sassy. And so, I just kind of like brought that to the table, that part of me. And I came into the audition, and it was Deanna Brigidi Thomas who, I had gone in for maybe 3 or 4 years prior for Fast and the Furious 8. She was at the time with John Pasadera, who does a lot of Christopher Nolan films. He does a lot of big casting directors, a lot of different things. And she was running the session, and I remember she just knew every single line of every character. And we did the scene that Fast 8 one, maybe we did about like 5 or 6 times. And she gave me notes every time. And I was like just coming out of school. So I was like very excited, but like just so nervous and wanting to get it right. And she just was super, she was like, The Rock's coming out this way. Michelle Rodriguez is here. And so she was very, she was just like a phenomenal reader and just a phenomenal casting person. So I walked in and she goes like, for Everything's Gonna Be Okay. And she goes, hey, good, good to meet you. I'm Deanna. And I was like, oh, nice to see you. And I kind of mumbled it because I was like intimidated by her at the time. And I was like, and she goes, what'd you say? And I was like, oh, it's nice to see you. And she's like, well, where do I know you? And I go like, oh, I auditioned for you for Fast like 8 like a few years ago. And she goes, well, you have a fucking elephant memory. And I was like, well, I mean, it was a pretty formative thing for me at the time. It's like the biggest thing that I had gone out for up until that point. And so right off the bat, we already kind of like had a rapport. And then she was kind of like, oh my God, you were the one who spoke Spanish. And so we just kind of hit it off. And then we played with it. We played with it like 3 or 4 different times. And then she goes, yo, what are you up to in a couple weeks? Josh is out of town right now. He's in, I think, England at the time. He was in England. And then she goes, but like when he comes back, I want you to read with him. And I'm like, I mean, I'm here, I'm around. And so a couple weeks, I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks actually passed by. Josh came back into town. We read together, had really great chemistry, and he gave me some notes. And I didn't hear from him for maybe another month or so. And I was like, oh man. And then I called my agents, and they were like, you're still in the mix. And I was like, all right, and everybody always says that, but I feel like, you never really actually give much weight to it. And then I literally like 2 days, or I think a day before something, or 2 days before, they were like, they want you to test for the role. And I was like, wow, okay. So it happened all like kind of like within a short period of time once we got the test. But I mean, it was a long period of sort of waiting, and I wasn't sure if it would even really come through or not. And I felt like really good about it. And then we did the test. We tried it so many different ways. It really felt like almost just sort of like a work session. It felt really fun. Like we basically sat down in Deanna's, like she had sort of like a bungalow casting office, and we just sat and just talked for maybe like 20 or 25 minutes beforehand, she and Josh and I, and then we went into it and just played, and it was so fun. We tried different things, like sped it up a little bit, slowed it down in different places. And it was really exciting and felt a lot more natural than I thought it would. And I think more and more I hear about experiences like that happening in audition processes where like people say more and more that it feels a lot more like a work session as opposed to these like sort of big network and studio tests where everybody's sitting there watching you in these like, chairs and judging you with every moment. It feels a lot more comfortable when the creator's there and the casting director and them. And it's not a bunch of people that, obviously we have to do that at times, but it felt really just really, really comfortable. So that was kind of the audition process for us, for me.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, I could see why, on the one hand, it would have to be somewhat weird, where you're asking someone to come into a random office you've got for the time, and three people in chairs they've dragged in
Yeah.
there, like just stare at you and go,
Yes.
dance. But
Yes.
at the same time,
Dance, monkey
they're
dance.
trying to
Yeah.
find people that
Yeah.
can, that they can stand to work a 12 or 14-hour day with sometimes.
hmm
And it's got to
Yes.
be important to
Withstand that
know.
pressure.
Yeah, it's got to be important to know that you can just stand to be in the room with this person, no matter what they're bringing to the table. Uh,
That's so real, man. Yeah, Tina Fey, I loved her book Bossy Pants, and at one point she goes like, a lot of times when you're working with people, it's just the people that you want to work with on the 12th or 14th hour, like you said, and you're
right?
just tired as fuck, and you're like, I just really just want to, be around this person. And if you don't, then you're like that. It's sometimes a make or break. The personality thing.
I know when you're starting out in your career or trying to get gigs, there can feel like a pressure to want to take everything. But you do
Yeah.
have the power to be in a room and go, yeah, I don't know that I could stand
hmm
to actually be on this show. Actually, um, what
Yeah.
what do you look for, or what kind of signals for you when you know, oh, I think I would enjoy working with these folks.
Yeah, I think a huge like positive marker for me is when they're willing to play and collaborate. I think like there are some rooms that I've been in where it feels very much like you're a number, and they are very pedantic and sometimes can be a little bit terse with their direction. And I already feel like that's a little bit of a trigger sometimes because, it feels like they might not exactly want you for you, but they want you to be this certain mold of what they want you to be. And hey, it's like, there are some people who just have different modalities of working, but you can tend to kind of feel the vibe. I remember I went into an audition room and I was like a callback, and the director was just so heavy handed with and he was very like, he would stop in the middle and say no. And wouldn't even kind of let me get through it. And I was like, I don't know why he brought me in, because he doesn't seem happy with what I kind of decided. And I think more and more I'm realizing that it's like, there are people that are just not going to like what you have every time. And that's totally okay. And I'm realizing now, I think it's like you said, it's like, when you're first starting out, sometimes you don't have the agency to be able to do that. And you kind of just have to take in a job and be like, please like me. And now it's kind of like to be able to be like, okay, I've worked enough at this point where I know, like, I mean, one of the biggest experiences for me, like that kind of was a trigger for me that I was like, okay, if I've done this, I feel like I'm doing something right, was Grace and Frankie and working with Michael Showalter, who's somebody who like
Yeah.
I've looked up from like Wet Hot American Summer and Search Party, which is like one of my favorite shows on television, just getting to work with him. And then like Marta Kaufman, coming from Friends. And I just was like, this is so, and obviously Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, like, first and foremost, I should say, but I think after that, I was like, you know what? Like the way that he worked with me and was like, bring your quirks. Like, I love these quirks. Like, what would this do in his time when he's like not like, and when nobody's watching? And like, that was super formative for me to be like, you know what? Not everybody's going to like what I have to offer, but some people will. And those people I'd love to work with because they're just champions of actors and of creativity. And I love that. I love people who are creative and willing to throw spaghetti on the wall and see what
Yeah.
sticks.
Well, and no matter what you do, not everybody's going to like it. It's just impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to
You can't
connect with
please everybody.
but if you're going to connect with a portion of the audience, if you can do it in an honest and true way, it's going to connect deeper and better. So if you're only going to get part of the
Yeah.
audience anyway, you might as well get 100% of it.
Yeah, totally. You can't, I think more and more I realize with these we can have more niche audiences with these streaming platforms. I think that's one of the amazing things is, with the advent of those over the top platforms, I think it's really amazing. I think before we just had these main broadcast networks, and now we have the ability to cater to niche audiences like Search Party. That's one show that I'm like, so excited that it has a home. I think like maybe even 5 or 10 years ago, people wouldn't have known what to do with it. But now it's exciting that it has a home, or even everything's going to be okay as well,
Well, and like you've done a Go 90 series, and there's venues and distribution avenues for things that simply wouldn't have existed. Even on the prestige end, HBO being able to put the money down for whatever Alan Ball wants to do next, things like that. I don't know I would have always existed,
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit? I'd seen in your bio that you both enjoy writing poetry and also ASL, sign language, which obviously is not going to go over super great in the medium that we're on right now. But I wondered if you would talk a little bit about how you got into poetry, or what keeps that as an artistic function that you use to ground yourself.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I literally I didn't even think that I'd get to talk about that. So that's really exciting because they're both, like you said, it's a really big outlet for me, I think, in both senses. Like even in sign language, I feel like, so I guess, with poetry, I'd gone, candidly, I went through a pretty bad sort of breakup last year, and I just sort of, I went through this huge period of just being really sad, almost just every day. And, and my mom was sick at the time too. So I felt like I put a lot of he was helping me a lot with that. And so in a way I felt that, I don't know, I was feeling just the world crumbling, and I felt like I just started writing. I don't know how I started, but I just started writing these little sort of word plays, and then they started rhyming, and I was like, okay, well, let me start building upon this. And there'd be nights where, I'd go to bed at 10:30, and then I couldn't fall asleep till 2 or 3 in the morning, just because my mind was racing. And so in a way, it became a huge coping mechanism for me to just sit down and get out my thoughts in my head that were just gnawing at my brain sometimes. I think acting can help that in certain senses, but we're not acting all the time. The majority of the time we're auditioning. And I think I just felt like it was a really big outlet for me in a way that I was like, this also doesn't have to do anything with me getting it. There's no professional aspect to this. There's no monetary value to this. This is purely for my emotions,
Yeah.
and so it became like a huge part for me. And then, one turned into like 10, turned into, I think I have about 50 in my notes section now. And one of my favorite artists, his name is Rostam. He came off from Vampire Weekend, and his brothers Zal Bamangli, who did the OA, and so I was listening to a podcast about Rostam, and he was saying a huge part is I just literally would put stuff into my notes section. When I think of a song or a lyric, I put it in my notes section. So I just started doing that, and and now I go to like open mics and I'll do them from time to time, and it's so scary because it's like the most vulnerable. I think it's different when you're doing a television show because you have the guise of a different character over you. Whereas like when you're speaking your own words, they are yours and nobody else's, and you have to own them because it's a part of you. And if people don't like it, then it's like a reflection. And if they don't like you. So yeah, it just became a huge outlet for me. And then with sign language, funny enough, I had a friend Omar. He's still my friend. We just were hanging out. We spent the last few weeks together in Texas and Mexico. But I met him a few years ago, and we just sort of like hit it off. And then we've been homies ever since. But like we haven't been in the same city as much. And we were having a conversation between it was me, him, and his boyfriend at one point, and he and his boyfriend at the time was hearing, and so we were having a conversation, and he has an app called Ava that basically picks up. I think it's something different now, but at the time it was called Ava, and it picks up speaking, but and then it translates, and it's basically like voice to text.
Hmm.
And it was having trouble picking up everything, and so his boyfriend was trying to finger spell, but he didn't really sign very well, and so it was like it was a huge experience, like a learning experience for me, because after he goes, like it made me feel really left out, that like one of my good friends and like my boyfriend, I couldn't even communicate with them. And it had a huge impact on me, especially because like, I mean, when I think about it, my career, a huge part of it is communication. And I was like, wow, this is so I spent he went off to New York, and I spent, I guess, about 3 months or so, like every day at the gym I would just watch like 20 or 30-minute videos of this guy named Bill Vickers from LifePrint. It's totally free on YouTube. And I just learned first finger spelling, how to learn the alphabet, and then from there I learned basic like fruits, colors, numbers. And I'm still bad on numbers. I'm still working on that. But that was one of my New Year's resolutions last year for 2019, was to learn sign language. And it was really important for me. And I felt like, the goal was literally to be able to communicate with Omar. And now I mean, it's just, it was amazing to be at the end of last year, like just last month in December, like his parents mostly only speak Spanish. And
Hmm.
so they know some sign, but I was then translating from Spanish into sign language, and then from sign language to Spanish. And I was like, it just felt like it felt like a really good experience, or like a good feeling to like do that for my friend. And like his grandma, who he's never able to communicate with, like tell him how old like she was, because like that things get lost in translation. And I don't know, he's had a huge impact on my life and taught me so much and made me a better person for knowing him. And yeah, and he's so patient with me signing, because it's just like he appreciates that I'm trying to learn, and I think it's really great because he's also just been able to kind of adapt to hearing culture his whole life, because there weren't many people growing up who were deaf around him. So it's been a huge a challenge for him growing up, and and he's been able to adapt, but like he's like, wow, now you're adapting to mine. So it was really special to me to have that connection with him. So yeah, those have been, in a way, yeah, my a huge, I guess, yeah, part of my last year has been, yeah, poetry and sign language.
I would think that both those experiences, but both getting into poetry at all, and any kind of connecting on that level with someone close to you has to factor into the access of emotions you've got in front of the camera. Uh, just it's got to add to your
Yeah.
library of places that you can go to. Have you felt as an actor over the last year or two? Have you had any moments on set where you were really pleased with the kind of honesty of the place you got to?
Yeah, I mean, I think of just like, the love that I had for my friends, like the love that I have for Omar and like, my other friends like Madison and Kelly and, Alyssa. Like I think about these people who I love so much, and sometimes that like overwhelms me to the point that I don't know, sometimes like during the show everything is going to be okay. There'd be times when like I have to have an emotional scene, and like I think so much during school, it was like a lot of times we were learning like how to connect to things that made us sad, but sometimes the things that make me happy are the things that make me cry the most, because it's like I'm so overwhelmed with like joy about something, or to be able to connect with somebody on a way, like the feeling of being able to connect with one of your best friends and like without the need of like a cell phone or this like sort of like technological impediment. It was just so fucking cool. And to feel like I could, communicate with my friends that way, and with him and any of my friends, is just something that sometimes makes me, get really excited and I'm emotional. So I think in a way, like that, that sense of like connection that I have is something that I feel like always kind of helps work. I think you have to live a full life, because like one of my teachers would say, like, what you have trouble with in real life, you're going to have trouble with on stage or on camera. And I think that that's really true, because, you can sort of try to force and muscle as many experiences that you want to, but in the end of the day, it's like you kind of have to live a full life in order to be able to like sort of pull from and and be able to relate to a character. Not every single character you can, but I think it helps to live a full life so that you have a full plate to be able to sort of eat from.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time today to talk to me about it all. I really appreciate it.
Heck yeah.
Everything is going to be okay. It's coming out on Freeform. Looks like January 16th. So really soon.
Yes, January 16th. You got it. Yeah.
And everybody can check it out.
PM.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. And it'll be on Hulu the next day also.
Great. That's honestly, let's be real, that's how I watch most things.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, yes. So I look forward to that. And thank you so much, Les. I appreciate it.
Yeah, have a great day. Bye.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Electric Sweater Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter @TV Dudes. All the music for our show is by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and electricsweater.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.